by the hundreds of thousands operating in this nation after $5 billion has 38 that don't operate. Just stop the game, stop the bailout. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back. Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. For what purposes?
Full vote, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New Jersey requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. For what purpose, gentleman from Massachusetts, rise?
I am, Mr. Chairman, I am waiting the arrival of Mr. Fortenberry, I think, to make his amendment. No, excuse me?
Did you want to strike the last word to tell?
Not at this moment.
Let's go last. Just rise. We're going to rise.
First gentleman from New Jersey, rise.
I move that the committee now do rise.
Questions on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 5325, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 5325 and has come to no resolution thereon. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that during further consideration of H.R. 5325 of the Committee of the Whole, pursuant to House Resolution 667, no further amendment to the bill may be offered except pro forma amendments offered at any point in the reading by the chair or ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees for the purpose of debate. Amendments printed in the congressional record are numbered 1, 10, 17, and 18. Amendment by Mrs. Blackburn regarding an across-the-board reduction. Amendment by Mrs. Blackburn regarding Section 1705 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005. An amendment by Mr. Brown limiting funds for the Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy. Amendment by Mr. Brown regarding Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy Awards with expected technology readiness levels. An amendment by Mr. Shabbat regarding funding levels in Title IV of the bill. An amendment by Mr. Cleaver limiting funds relating to the Missouri River Ecosystem Restoration Plan. Amendment by Mr. Kravasak regarding the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. Amendment by Mr. DeFazio regarding Section 9104D of the Title 48 Code of Federal Regulations, which shall be debatable for 20 minutes. Amendment by Mr. Denham regarding Section 10011B of Public Law 11-11. An amendment by Mr. Engel limiting funds for the new light-duty vehicles, which will be debatable for 20 minutes. Amendment by Mr. Flake regarding an across-the-board reduction. Amendment by Mr. Flake limiting funds for the Wind Powering America Initiative. Amendment by Mr. Flake limiting funds for the Batteries Electric Drive Technology Program. Amendment by Mr. Flores limiting funds to enforce Section 526 of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. An amendment by Mr. Fortenberry regarding funding levels for defense nuclear nonproliferation. Amendment by Mr. Fortenberry limiting funds for the proposed rural energy conservation program, energy conservation standards for battery chargers and external power supplies. An amendment by Mr. Frelinghuysen regarding funding levels. An amendment and blocked by Mr. Frelinghuysen consisting of amendments specified in this order not earlier disposed of. An amendment by Mr. Gardner regarding energy management requirements under the National Energy Conservation Policy Act. Amendment by Mr. Gomert regarding Department of Energy construction purchase or lease in the District of Columbia, amendment by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas regarding funding for Corps of Engineers operations and maintenance. 2 amendments by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas regarding funding levels for energy efficiency and renewable energy. Amendment by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas regarding funding levels for Corps of Engineers construction. An amendment by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas limiting funds for Department of Energy Program Science. An amendment by Mr. Jordan limiting funds for Title 17 loan guarantees. An amendment by Mr. King of Iowa regarding subchapter 4 of Chapter 31 of the Title 40 United States Code. An amendment by Mr. Kucinich regarding Section 1703 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005. An amendment by Mr. Landry limiting funds relating to mitigation methodology referred to as the modified Charleston method. An amendment by Mr. Landry regarding Section 801 of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. An amendment by Mr. Lukenmeyer limiting funds for the study conducted pursuant to Section 5018A 1 of the Water Resources Development Act of 2007. Amendment by Mr. Lukenmeyer regarding funds for the study authorized in Section 108 of the Energy and Water Development and Related Energies Appropriations Act 2009. Amendment by Mr. Lujan regarding funding levels for defense environmental cleanup. Amendment by Ms. Lummis regarding uranium. An amendment by Mr. McIntyre limiting funds to plan for termination of periodic nourishment of water resource development projects. Amendment by Mr. Mulvaney regarding an across-the-board reduction. Amendment by Mr. Pierce regarding funding levels for defense environmental cleanup. Amendment by Mr. Polis regarding funding levels for weapons activities, which will be debatable for 20 minutes. An amendment by Mr. Reed regarding funding levels for non-defense environmental cleanup. An amendment by Mr. Rohrbacher limiting funds for the U.S.-China Clean Energy Research Center. Amendment by Ms. Loretta Sanchez of California regarding funding levels for defense nuclear non-proliferation, which shall be debatable for 20 minutes. An amendment by Mr. Schock regarding a prohibition on the planting of row crops. An amendment by Mr. Schweikert regarding Title 10 Code of Federal Regulations. Amendment by Mr. Stearns regarding funding levels for advanced research projects, agencies, energy. An amendment by Mr. Stearns limiting funds to subordinate interest in any loan guarantees. Amendment by Mr. Stearns limiting funds for purchase of light-duty vehicles. An amendment by Mr. Tipton regarding funds to conduct surveys. And further, that each such amendment be offered by only the member named in this request or designee, or by a member who caused it to be printed in the congressional record or designee, shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole, and shall not be subject to amendment except that the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees each may offer one pro forma amendment for the purpose of debate. And further, that except as otherwise specified, each amendment shall be debatable for 10 minutes, equally divided in control by the proponent and an opponent. And further, that an amendment shall be considered to fit the description stated in this request if it addresses in whole or in part the object described.
Is there objection?
Right to object, Mr. Speaker. We've got we have the discussion that needs to take place before we make a decision, and I see the gentlelady coming onto the floor. So if we could take just a moment to discuss. There's an amendment we would like to be made in order, and I need to visit with the lady just a second if we can.
Gentleman from New
Mr. Chair, I
Mexico.
will withdraw my reservation.
Reservation is withdrawn. Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to House Resolution 667 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 5325. Will the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Thornberry, kindly resume the chair?
House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 5325, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for energy and water development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
From the Committee of the Whole rose earlier today a request for recorded vote on Amendment Number 9 offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, had been postponed, and the bill had been read through page 31, line 8. Pursuant to the order of the House of today, no further amendment may be offered except those specified in the previous order, which is at the desk. For what purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the gentleman specify which of amendments he's offering at this time?
Line 4, line 94, page 30, line 94. This is incorrect. Mr. Chairman, amendment number 94.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Fortenberry of Nebraska.
Pursuant to the order of the House of today, the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Fortenberry, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to thank both the chairman and ranking member of the subcommittee for the opportunity to discuss an important problem in our nation's nuclear security infrastructure and for their support of this amendment. The amendment would reduce funding for the mixed oxide fuel program of the Department of Energy by approximately $17 million and redirect it to the National Nuclear Security Administration's Global Threat Reduction Initiative. Such a redirection of funds would provide for greater security and be a wiser investment of taxpayer dollars. If there's one thing we can all agree on, Mr. Chairman, it's that dollars are scarce in Washington. And with this in mind, I'm concerned about the amount of money that has been spent on the mixed oxide fuel program known as MOX at the DOE. Under an agreement signed by the United States and Russia in the year 2000, both countries agreed to dispose of excess weapons-grade plutonium by blending it with uranium to create mixed oxide fuel. The intent was to use it as a fuel in civilian nuclear reactors. Subsequently, the Department of Energy spent billions on the mixed oxide fuel project. The fuel is intended for a market segment that has yet to emerge. And according to a report from the Governmental Accountability Office, the Department of Energy has had to consider offering subsidies to attract potential customers for the fuel. The most optimistic estimates predict that the mixed oxide production facility will begin operating 6 years behind schedule. Another problem is that the mixed oxide fuel project poses a new nuclear nonproliferation risk, as MOX fuel can be separated into weapons-grade nuclear material. In addition, the Russians have not lived up to their treaty obligations. They have fallen behind on their own MOX production schedule. As a result, the United States has had to step in and provide our own designs for the MOX plant to jumpstart Russia's. As a co-founder of the House Nuclear Security Caucus, Mr. Chairman, I feel confident that the funding removed from the mixed oxide fuel program will be put to much better use, protecting our nation through the Global Threat Reduction Initiative. By the end of the current year, the Global Threat Reduction Initiative will have converted or shut down 81 research reactors, removed over 3,400 kilograms of vulnerable nuclear material, and secured nearly 1,400 buildings containing radiological materials. There are other important global threat reduction initiatives as well that could use additional funding. We should be proud of our work, Mr. Chairman, as a country in our nuclear security efforts. But it is abundantly clear that the mixed oxide fuel program is not the most productive use of our constituents' taxpayer dollars. The persistence of nuclear threats demands that we retain the highest sense of vigilance and agility when it comes to our own nuclear security, and for that reason, I urge the adoption of this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. What purpose? Gentleman from New
Move to
Jersey.
strike the
rise.
last word, Mr. Chairman. Rise in support of the gentleman's amendment.
Excuse me, does the gentleman from New Jersey rise in opposition to the amendment?
No. I rise in support of the amendment.
The time is controlled by the member in opposition.
Under the previous order of the House, the time is controlled by the member offering the amendment and a member opposed to the amendment.
Would the gentleman yield to me, Mr. Fortenberry? Thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment and recognize his advocacy for non-proliferation. I share my colleagues' concerns about the National Nuclear Security Administration's management of the MOX fuel fabrication facility project. The latest Department of Energy reports indicate that the MOX facility could take months, if not years, to complete or longer to complete, and will exceed the current baseline cost as much as $1.4 billion due to continued construction problems and creeping scope. So I'm pleased to support the gentleman's amendment and yield back my time to him.
Okay. Does any member seek to control time in opposition to the amendment? Gentleman from Nebraska seek to yield the remainder of his time.
I'd like to yield time to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
Gentleman's recognized.
May I inquire from the chair how much time is remaining?
1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Yes, the reason that Mr. Fortenberry and I are making this amendment is that it would address a wrong-headed plan by the Department of Energy to build a facility to produce dangerous, highly radioactive nuclear fuel that no one actually wants to buy. The department wants to take uranium and plutonium from dismantled nuclear bombs and make fuel for commercial nuclear reactors. This plan will cost taxpayers $2 billion. It is a nuclear bomb budget buster. It is the most expensive way to boil water that has ever been proposed on the planet. It is also unnecessary. No electric utility in the United States wants to buy this fuel. And it's also a serious threat to human health. The MOX, the mixed oxide plutonium fuel, is actually more dangerous than existing commercial nuclear fuel. And in the event of a nuclear disaster, the releases from a MOX-fueled reactor will cause between 39 and 131% more fatalities than a traditional fueled nuclear reactor. MOX is a reverse field of dreams. If you build it, they will not come. The utility industry is not going to arrive. Instead, it is a nightmare that will leave future generations to safeguard a dangerous fuel with no buyers. I congratulate the gentleman, and I urge an aye vote.
Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nebraska. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman from Nebraska.
given that there are competing amendments in this regard, I ask for a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings offered by the gentleman from Nebraska will be postponed. The clerk will continue to read.
Page 31, line 9, naval reactors, $1,086,635,000. Office of the Administrator, $400 million to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Mexico rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Pierce of New Mexico.
Pursuant to the order of the House of today, the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentleman from New Mexico.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Chairman, I offer this amendment today which transfers funds from the Office of NNSA Administrator and into the Defense Environmental Management Fund, which program which funds the cleanup of radioactive waste. This program is important to our defensive mission, our environment, and public safety. The Defense Environmental Management Program has demonstrated success in solid waste disposition, soil and groundwater remediation, and facility decontamination and decommissioning, and will continue to do so with sufficient funding. I would like to thank Chairman Frelinghuysen and Ranking Member Visclosky for their hard work on this bill and for prioritizing this issue particularly. Unfortunately, the budget request from the White House did not accurately reflect the monetary needs to fully fund the project contained in the EM program. My amendment would simply put back $40 million into the Environmental Management Program, which will provide much-needed relief to the already constrained budgets for these projects. As we accelerate the permanent disposal of radioactive wastes, we decrease downstream long-term costs for security, storage, and then providing better, safer environment into the future. Many of the storage sites that currently exist for radioactive waste sit above ground and are threatened by tornadoes, earthquakes, and wildfires. As I'm sure most of you have seen this week, New Mexico is susceptible to wildfires that can be started at any moment, get out of control extremely quickly, and rage out of control for days. Los Alamos is located in a forest area and is highly vulnerable. In fact, just a little less than 1 year ago, the Los Conchas fire burned around 150,000 acres of thick pine woodlands in the Santa Fe National Forest, which surrounds the lab complex and adjacent town of Los Alamos. At one point, the leading edge of the fire was as close as 50 feet from the grounds, which contained thousands of outdoor drums of plutonium-contaminated waste. Until this week, the Los Conchas fire was the largest in New Mexico's history. There is a similar story from the year 2000, the Cerro Grande fire. As a result, just this January, DOE and the New Mexico Environment Department entered into a consent order framework agreement to expeditiously address the highest risk waste at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The waste amounts to 3,706 cubic meters of non-cemented above-ground waste. The agreement calls for the removal of this waste by June 30th, 2014. This agreement will allow LANL to meet groundwater and surface water requirements as well as ensure the health and safety of the New Mexico residents who live closest to the lab. While the overall bill dedicates funding to LANL for this project, it still falls short of what is needed. Without full funding, projects like removal of the highest risk waste at LANL are in jeopardy. Finally, I am transferring this fund out of the Office of the Administrator for NNSA. These funds are needed more in the field and less in Washington, which, as we know, could go on a strict diet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. What purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition, reluctantly.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the gentleman from New Mexico's amendment. The bill before the committee provides a total of $4.9 billion for defense environmental cleanup activities at the Department of Energy. This funding sustains thousands of cleanup jobs, and I thank my colleague for his deep concern about supporting these programs and meeting our cleanup commitments. Our bill makes several difficult choices to achieve our deficit reduction goals, providing the necessary increases for our nuclear security programs while making targeted reduction to activities which can be deferred. This amendment seeks to partially reverse that priority setting that we put in place. It targets vital nuclear security programs and shifting funds to non-nuclear, non-security environmental cleanup that should be ramped back. The cleanup programs received an infusion of $6 billion from the Recovery Act, aka the stimulus, accelerating the scope of work and pace of cleanup at those sites. And while I would like to express my support for the cleanup, we cannot sustain that stimulus-level funding that we saw in the past. And the funding for Los Alamos, which my colleague is particularly concerned about, is extremely knowledgeable about, and is very, very concerned about, will actually increase by 45% or $30 million over last year's level. The 1.7 reduction to defense cleanup is a reasonable one in our bill. Recently, we've been informed by the Department of Energy that the Department of Energy may miss a number of its cleanup milestones because they had been relying on receiving large funding increases year after year, an assumption that was overly optimistic in any budget environment. We cannot continue to shovel in funding to make up for poor planning. Instead, the Department needs to work constructively with its stakeholders to establish reasonable and sustainable plans for remediating these sites, which will still take another 20 to 30 years. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman, I rise reluctantly to oppose the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico. I deeply respect his concern with the oversight of the programs under NNSA, and I agree that there are some areas of oversight that need to be strengthened. I cannot support any further cuts, however, to the Office of the Administrator. As written, the bill already reduces funding for the Administrator's Office by $10 million from this year's enacted level. This amendment would compound that cut by $89 million. At the same time, NNSA has already received an increase of $275 million when compared to current year spending. I'm concerned that any further reductions to the Administrator's Office would hamper the ability of NNSA to plan and oversee its core mission areas. I would like to work with the Chairman and the gentleman from New Mexico to address the concerns expressed and to ensure that NNSA properly maintains and cleans up its sites in New Mexico and throughout the country, and would yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Mexico is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have no additional comments and would yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Mexico rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to desk.
The clerk will record the amendment. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Lujan of New Mexico.
Pursuant to the order of the House of today, the gentleman from New Mexico and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from New Mexico for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. My amendment is similar to that of my friend from New Mexico. It would simply increase funding for defense environmental cleanup at specifically the NNSA labs by just under $22 million to bring it to the level of the President's request, and decrease funding for the NNSA Office of the Administrator by the same amount. I offer this amendment because, to put it simply, it's a more effective use of taxpayer funds for NNSA to remove dangerous, toxic waste from their lab's property than it is to maintain the current levels of redundant oversight bureaucracy. Last June, the Los Conchas fire burned 150,000 acres in my district in New Mexico and encircled Los Alamos National Laboratory. Had the fire burned contaminated areas on the lab property, a plume of toxic smoke would have threatened the health of everyone in its path. The lab has promised to clean these areas, many of which contain waste from, if you can believe this, Mr. Chairman, the Manhattan Project and Cold War weapons programs. But Congress must also fulfill its obligation to appropriate funds for the cleanup. While the NNSA labs have pressing environmental issues that demand our attention, there has been increasing evidence that paring back the NNSA's office and the Administrator could actually make the agency and its labs more cost-effective and productive. A recent report by the National Academies of NNSA's management of its laboratories concluded that the NSA's oversight had become inefficient and a distraction from the lab's vital mission. Following a series of hearings, the House Armed Services Committee added provisions to the FY 2013 National Defense Authorization Act that this body passed a few weeks ago to change NNSA's approach and reduce its personnel. This amendment is consistent with these provisions. There are going to be fewer authorized NNSA personnel, then NNSA's funding should reflect that. My budget-neutral amendment reduces outlays by $3 million next fiscal year by simply moving funds from the NNSA regulatory arm to a place where they put boots on the ground and support cleanup. And while I very much appreciate the work of the Chairman and the Ranking Member, the entire committee in this area, with their commitment to cleanup, it's my hope, Mr. Chairman, that
I'd be able to emphasize to our distinguished leaders managing the floor of the dire situation that needs attention in New Mexico and around the country. With that, Mr. Chair, I urge adoption of this amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim opposition to the bill.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in reluctant opposition to the gentleman's amendment. I want to thank my colleague from New Mexico, as I did Mr. Pierce, for his continued advocacy for the cleanup at Los Alamos. The committee is well aware of the increasing vulnerability of above-ground radioactive waste being stored at Los Alamos and share the members' concerns. As a result, our bill strongly supports accelerating the cleanup efforts there, providing a total of $215 million for cleanup at the site. The bill increases funding $30 million, or 45%, above the fiscal year 2012 level. That makes the increase for Los Alamos the largest site expenditure increase across all the cleanups in our bill. But understandably, of course, you'd like more. We look forward to working with the member and to see what we can do to be of additional assistance. I'll be happy to yield to the ranking for any comments you may make.
Appreciate the chairman yielding. It would add my words to his, and would want to work with the gentleman as well as the former speaker from New Mexico. They have a very serious problem they're trying to address. My concern is the problems we have with management at the department, and this would, I think, complicate that problem given the increase that NNSA has. But again, understand what the gentleman is trying to do and would like to work with him and the chair.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New Jersey yields back. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from New Mexico is recognized.
Request a recorded vote, please.
The gentleman has requested a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico will be postponed. We'll read.
Page 32, line 1, environmental and other defense activities. Defense environmental cleanup, $4,930,078,000. Other defense activities, $813,364,000. Power Marketing Administration, Bonneville Power Administration Fund. Expenditures from the Bonneville Power Administration Fund are approved for construction of a high-voltage line from Bonneville's high-voltage system.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Move to strike the last word.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
I appreciate the recognition and would want to recognize at this point in time my colleague from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
I thank the gentleman from Indiana very much. And I just rise to briefly talk about light bulbs, because I know it's a subject of great interest to all of the members, and I know that there is going to be an effort by some Republican members later on tonight to repeal the new light bulb efficiency laws. And I just rise just to do a little bit of an explanation of what has happened. 5 years ago, a law passed here on the floor of the House, and it became law. And that law said that these old light bulbs, these light bulbs that Thomas Alva Edison invented and people really love, that they had to be made 28% more efficient in order to be sold in the United States. They really hadn't been made much more efficient. And a lot of people, they really love old light bulbs. They don't want their automobiles to look the same way they did 50 years ago. They don't want their television sets to look the same way they did 50 years ago. They don't want their cell phones to look the same way they did 15 years ago. But they really want their light bulbs to look the same, many people. And so here's what the American lighting industry did. Sylvania and General Electric, they make the same light bulb now. Gives off the same color, looks the same. Grandma had this light bulb in her house that gave off that warm glow that you remember from when you visited Grandma. Well, the new one gives off the same warm glow, except for this, that over the life of this new light bulb, you save $5 over what Grandma had to pay to the electric company to keep it on. You save $5 because it's so much more efficient. Now, it seems to me that we shouldn't be trying to repeal a law like that that reduces the amount of electricity that every American needs to use in their home. And by the way, times every light bulb in your home over the course of a year, you're going to save $100 to $160 every year. Same light bulb. It's on the market today. You can go out and buy it. You don't have to hoard it. I know some people are hoarding the old light bulbs that are 28% less efficient, and that's their right. They can do that. But you can go to the department store and buy the same light bulb, same looking light bulb, and save $5 over the life of that light bulb, giving off the same amount of light. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go out and buy one of these squiggly deals. Now, if you do go out and buy one of these squiggly deals, you actually have 78% more efficiency. And you save even more money if you buy one of these, but no one's saying you have to. You can use the same old light bulb. It's in the store today. Nothing got banned in terms of the old light bulb technology. It's still the same incandescent light bulb that Grandma used, except it's 28% more efficient. And I'm definitely not saying you got to buy one of these new jobs, which are in the stores as well. This only saves you $130 over the course of the 20-year life of this light bulb. In fact, increasingly what's going to happen is that when people move, in addition to packing up their television sets and their sofas, they're going to be packing up their light bulbs because these things save you money, $130 per light bulb over the course of the life of this light bulb. But again, you don't have to buy this if you don't like the way it looks. You don't have to buy one of these squiggly deals because you don't like the way it looks. You can go to the store and just buy the same light bulb that your grandma bought, that your great-grandma bought, because this thing goes back really to the beginning of the 20th century. And you can have the exact same feel, look in your living room, in your kitchen, in your bedrooms. Okay, so again, I just wanted to make this very clear to all the members because in the course of the debate today, we're going to have this discussion, but I have no idea why you would want to ban something that's 28% more efficient. Refrigerators are more efficient than they were 50 years ago. Automobiles are. Your cell phone has had a dramatic reduction in the cost of making a phone call on a cell phone, and now light bulbs are in the same category, but they look exactly the same. I'm just, again, making the point so that later on in the day, as we perhaps have a roll call on this once again, that members can understand what they're voting for. I thank the gentleman from Indiana very much for his yielding to me.
I appreciate the gentleman's illuminating comments and would yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The clerk will read.
Page 34, line 7. Operation and Maintenance, Southeastern Power Administration, $8,732,000. Operation and Maintenance, Southwestern Power Administration.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the remainder of Title III be considered as read, printed in the record, and open to amendment at any point.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any amendments to that portion of the bill? The clerk will read.
Page 47, line 12. Title IV, Independent Agencies, Appalachian Regional Commission, $75,317,000.
Purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Chairman, move to strike the last word.
Does the gentleman have an
I have
amendment?
an amendment at the desk, yes.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Thank you.
Amendment offered by Mr. Shabbat of Ohio, page 47, line 22. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $75,317,000. Page 48, line 14, after the dollar amount.
And that the amendment be considered as read.
Is there objection with dispensing of the reading? Seeing none? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I introduced this amendment because it's high time that we take our debt and our deficit seriously. We no longer can afford to go on with politics as usual and continue to subsidize wasteful spending programs and policies that redistribute wealth and really have zero economic impact. These supposed economic development programs that are referred to in my amendment are anything but that. Instead, they're really wasteful programs that the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, has found to be duplicative. In other words, they're in other bills, there are other programs that do exactly the same things. It's wasted tax dollars to do the same things over and over again, and really they have no track record of success. In 2009, the Congressional Budget Office and White House Office of Management and Budget found that the Denali Commission, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and the Delta Regional Authority had 29 duplicative programs, not one, not 10, not a dozen, 29 that do essentially the same thing. Furthermore, Citizens Against Government Waste have found that the Denali Commission duplicates several programs in the Labor Department. Last year, the GAO released a report detailing federal programs that overlap and provide similar services as a supplement to its report on, and the title of it is Opportunities to Reduce Potential Duplication in Government Programs, Save Tax Dollars, and Enhance Revenue. In this report, the GAO revealed the names of 80 federal economic development programs administered by 4 different agencies. Surely my colleagues in the House do not favor paying twice for the same program. Yet, Mr. Chairman, the decision to continue funding for these regional commissions will do exactly that, unless we eliminate them, which is what I'm suggesting that we do by this amendment. The taxpayers are fed up with frivolous spending of our federal government. It's time that we identify wasteful programs. We identify them, that's what we're doing here, and we cut them. Numerous agencies and organizations have plainly stated and repeatedly recommended the dismantling of these types of programs, and Congress ought to listen and heed these requests, and that's what I'm suggesting that we do in this particular legislation. And I'm suggesting in here programs that affect my own area. So I'm not just saying let's go in other areas around the country. The Appalachian area is in the area of the country that I represent. It's in the same general area. And I'm saying let's not just do it in Alaska or out west or somewhere else. We ought to do it right at home in my district as well. So that's what I'm suggesting, that we eliminate these programs. As I indicated, it's supported by Citizens Against Government Waste, and there are a number of other budget-cutting type of organizations that are in favor of this. And so I would recommend my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
In opposition, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. Appalachia confronts a combination of challenges that few other parts of the country face. Mountainous terrain and isolation, dispersed population, inadequate infrastructure, lack of financial and human resources, a weak track record in applying for and receiving assistance from other federal programs. For decades, Appalachia has experienced an economic lag. Even during years of economic expansion, employment growth in this 13-state region was significantly lower than the nation as a whole. Even with ARC's funding, in fiscal '09, Appalachia received 33% less federal expenditures per capita than the nation. It's clear ARC programs do not duplicate other federal programs, but instead they extend the reach of those programs. In the last 5 years, every dollar of ARC investment yielded $10 of private sector investment. Clearly, ARC is an effective and efficient steward of the taxpayer dollar, targeting these funds where they are needed the most. As a result, 125,000 households were served by infrastructure. Nearly 140,000 jobs were created or retained, and 100,000 students received vital job training skills. In addition, completing the Appalachian Development Highway System is expected to generate some $5 billion in annual economic benefit for the entire country by 2035. But perhaps just as important as ARC's winning investment strategies is its working knowledge of the community served. when storms ripped through rural Kentucky last March, leveling entire towns, and particularly devastating the community of West Liberty, ARC was one of the first agencies on the ground to support and coordinate the state, local, and federal response. Largely because of ARC, these communities have a sense of hope for a successful rebuild and restoration. The Appalachian Regional Commission is uniquely qualified to administer these much-needed and targeted federal investments to close the economic gap between Appalachia and the rest of the nation, to bring the region's 420 counties and 25 million people into the nation's economic mainstream. We must uphold our commitment to the American people to reduce the size and scope of government while maintaining funding for proven, effective programs like ARC that create jobs and keep the economy moving. I'm confident ARC will continue its strong legacy of creating jobs and positive change in areas of the country which have been bypassed by opportunity. I urge a no vote and yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Is he allowed? Does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
I do. Could I ask how much time I have left in my 5 minutes?
2 minutes.
The gentleman has had 2 minutes but yielded back his time.
Okay, I think I reserved, but that's... All right, thank you.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent to reclaim his time?
I do.
Is there objection? And the gentleman has yielded 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I have the utmost respect from our distinguished chairman, and he speaks with great wisdom on many, many occasions, and I'm sure he did on this occasion as well. However, I would just reiterate a couple of things. Number one, that we did adopt a ban on earmarks, which I think was the right thing to do. It was really a proclamation to the American people that we're serious about stopping wasteful spending. However, in essence, when we have these types of things, they are really giant earmarks to certain areas of the country. Now, they do go through scrutiny, and so it's unlike an earmark in some areas, but nonetheless, these are benefiting certain types, certain parts of the country at the expense of other parts of the country, similarly to what an earmark does. So I just think they're really bad policy, as I indicated, duplicative in many instances. So we have different programs doing exactly the same thing, so we're really wasting dollars. And prudence says that we must reduce spending and must pay down our debt. We have to do it. If we're going to do it, this is the type of thing we really have to cut, and this would go towards deficit reduction. We've got a $13 trillion deficit. We need to start working on it, and I just think this is one way to attempt to do that. And additionally, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman, I would note that it's the responsibility for providing aid and supporting local and regional development type things. It's the states and local governments, not the federal government, that ought to be funding these types of things. They're closer to the people. They're closer to monitoring the situation. It ought not to be the federal government doing these types of things. And so I would urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
On that, I would demand a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio will be postponed.
Thanks, Steve.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. Mr. Chairman, and I ask unanimous consent to consider the amendment out of order.
Is there objection to considering the amendment at this point? Hearing none, the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Reed of New York, page 25, line 5. After the dollar amount, insert increase by $36 million. Page 28, line 16. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $18 million. Page 31, line 23. After the second dollar amount, insert reduced by $18 million.
Pursuant to the order of the House of today, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise today to offer this amendment in a bipartisan fashion from my colleague, Mr. Higgins from New York. What we are looking to do here, Mr. Chairman, is amend the proposal before the committee to restore $36 million in funding to non-defense environmental cleanup. A similar amendment, Mr. Chairman, last year passed the House with a total votes of 261 people voting in favor of the proposed amendment. Mr. Chairman, I understand the dire fiscal situation that we find ourselves in America today. But what I have proposed here is putting that $36 million out into the field to deal with nuclear waste and nuclear waste cleanup sites across America. I have one of those nuclear waste sites in my district, the West Valley Demonstration Project in western New York that butts where Mr. Higgins' district is located. And what we're trying to do is take that $36 million that is otherwise going to be used in the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. for administrative purposes here and allocate that money out to the field, to the sites where it can be best utilized to clean up these nuclear waste facilities and make sure that the threat of nuclear waste to all of our citizens is completely remediated and taken care of so that we do not have to deal with this year after year after year. There are numerous reports out that show that by cleaning these facilities up sooner than later, we could potentially save hundreds of millions of dollars. So to me, at this point in time, this amendment makes sense. It recognizes the fiscal situation we find ourselves in America and takes care of a true public safety threat to all citizens of our great country. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Does any member seek time in opposition? Does any member seek time in opposition? Gentleman from New York.
I rise, seek time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in reluctant opposition to the amendment. Our bill fully funds the request for non-defense environmental cleanup at $198 million. I know my colleagues from New York State, Mr. Reed and Mr. Higgins, are particularly concerned about the West Valley site in New York, and we respect their views and that they know their districts and their state well. But this bill provides the full amount requested for the project in the President's budget. While below last year's level, it's a reasonable reduction given the need to reduce overall federal spending in our bill. But this amendment proposes to increase funding 18% over the amount of our request. This would be an unbalanced approach considering the reduction to other sites in the bill, and there are many sites in different congressional districts, some of which, a number of which have much higher hazard activities taking place, and that's not to minimize what's happening at this site. We've prepared in a bipartisan way a balanced bill, one that prioritizes available funding to address the highest risk activities first, while ensuring progress at lower risk sites that progress continues, albeit at a smaller pace. We simply cannot sustain the high levels of spending at every location and must make the hard choices to extend timelines where the risks are lower. As an offset, the amendment would eliminate the salaries of approximately 100 employees who are engaged in carrying out vital security activities, as well as the salaries of up to another 100 employees who are carrying out a variety of, I think, critically important energy and science programs at the Department of Energy. So I know their heart is in the right place. I know that they want to do more things to clean up the site in their home state, but I reluctantly oppose their amendment for the reasons that I've outlined, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to my colleague, Mr. Higgins from New York.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for the balance of the time.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong support of this bipartisan amendment to provide adequate funding for the non-defense environmental cleanup program. One of the most important roles of government is to protect public health and safety. However, the amount of money appropriated in this bill is insufficient to do one of these most important areas. Our amendment ensures that nuclear cleanup sites get the funding they need to protect surrounding communities from radioactive contamination. In my community and that of Mr. Reed's in western New York, the West Valley Nuclear Waste Reprocessing Plant was established in the 1960s in response to a federal call to commercialize the reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel from power reactors. Just a few years ago, the site ceased operation, and more than 600,000 gallons of high-level radioactive waste was left behind, posing a significant and enduring hazard. This site, prone to erosion, contains streams that drain into Lake Erie, located just 30 miles away. We have already seen a leak on the site develop into a plume of radioactive groundwater. If this radioactive waste makes its way into the Great Lakes, the largest source of surface fresh water in the world, the environmental and economic implications would be devastating. Without question, this hazardous and radioactive waste and the contamination that remains is one of our nation's largest environmental liabilities. Mr. Chairman, in these cleanup efforts, time is money. Failing to adequately fund the non-defense environmental cleanup program decelerates cleanup efforts. For the past 4 decades, progress in cleaning up West Valley has been delayed by legal disputes and funding shortfalls. For West Valley, this means $30 million in added maintenance costs per year. In the current budgetary climate, it is more important than ever that the federal government use taxpayers' monies most efficiently. Mr. Chairman, we cannot jeopardize the irreplaceable natural resource of the Great Lakes or the communities and resources near other nuclear sites across this nation by continuing to